I think it's very simple, Sabrina. You take care of your employees, they take care of the business, period. More than ever, we empower the employees. We give them the sense of there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
You're listening to the Profit by Design podcast, episode 12. You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. Hey, Profit Designers. In just a few moments, you're going to get to listen in on a conversation between myself and Chuck Parmely and Scott Mason of the overhead door company of Riverton Lander. Their business is located in Wyoming, and for many years, I've had the privilege of working with them to create a great place to work. And that's what we're going to dive into today on the podcast, is what really goes into creating a great place to work. And also, what is it like to be a business owner who knows your work culture is not the culture you want it to be, but you're not sure quite how to go about getting to that great place to work. And that's what we're going to discuss today. So, Chuck and Scott, you have a great place to work. Oh my goodness. I think I need a job there. So the reason we're talking today is you all signed up to go through Inc.'s Best Place to Work contest, and you had your business surveyed. All of your employees were surveyed. You guys had to fill out surveys, and then the results came back. And Chuck, I remember I was in the car late one evening. I had traveled to New Jersey, and I was reading through my emails, and I saw this email from Chuck, and it was the results of the Inc. survey. And I was floored. These were incredible results about your company. And so I wanted to have you come onto the podcast today to talk about how you and Scott together over time have really created a great place to work. And I know from having worked with you that this has been a major focus area for you for quite some time. You all have worked very hard on it. And you didn't start out feeling like you had a great place to work. You started out feeling like you had a lot that you needed to improve. So Chuck, maybe could you speak to that?
Yeah. So Sabrina and I have worked together for years, and as far back as 2009, and I pulled up some company meeting notes that we used to have Monday morning meetings, and I don't know if you would really call them Monday morning meetings. You'd probably better named as a Monday morning session. And I was reading these notes yesterday, and I'm looking at it, and I've got it all typed out, and it's all in capital letters. So you can just feel the hostility in these notes. So I want to read this and let you know just how I was feeling at the time when I was writing these notes. And, from what's in here, you can understand that there just wasn't a very friendly atmosphere to be around here. And I knew that I had to change that.
So you're relating the atmosphere to your mindset that you were in at the time.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear it. And because I think a lot of our listeners will be able to relate.
Yeah. So this is a company meeting on 1/16/2009. The first thing, this is how we started our Monday morning out. It's important to keep employees informed as to what is happening with the business. You're probably wondering what's going to happen. How long is it going to last? Will there be layoffs? What assurance do you have? I wished I had those answers. In all the years I've been in business, I've never seen it shut off the way it has this year. It's like the faucet just shut off. I also want you to know I feel for you, and I'm concerned about you and your family just as I am with mine. We have the best group of people working here right now. I don't want to lose anyone, but I can only do so much. Now more than ever, we need teamwork. Everyone and everything needs to work together and make things go as smooth as possible. We need to change our attitudes from I can't to The hell I can't. The minute you tell yourself it can't be done, you're 100% right, because it won't happen. Total backlog of this morning is 80,000. We usually operate between 250 and 400,000. It's hard to sustain a full workforce at such reduced income. I think that within the next 3 weeks, I'll have to lay off 4 people unless something happens. If you're laid off, I hope it is for a short time. If I were you, I would file for unemployment as soon as you can. I'm trying to keep everyone working the best I can. I must say, the first person Casper has asked us to come and help them Tormont job. He needs 4 people. It will be our only crew working on the job, and his people will not be there. I must say, the first person that complains about working out of town will be the first person to get laid off, no matter where I hear it from. You will know today who you are, who will be going to Casper. I need to know if there's anyone not willing to go. I'm sorry to say that there's no distributions for this last quarter. We're talking about our profit sharing. They say wisdom comes from groups, not individuals. That's why we're all here today. I need help in identifying what we can do to get us through this downturn. Times are tough and we need to get lean and mean. We need to keep the cash flow coming in. How do we do that? What is it that we do that creates income or little no cost? Number 1, use of inventory on hand. Number 2, service is a good income maker. And then I go through a bunch of, material type stuff that we could have done to save money or make money and that type of thing. Increase our customer base, getting new customers. How do we achieve that? And we go through talking about that. Have you gone out of your way to get a sale? Are you making every minute count? Again, we need to perform better than ever if we're going to survive. And some more notes. This is my company. You work for me. I expect you to do your job. I'm tired of doing my job, trying to make this company survive, yet still having to police your job duties. You know what your job is, and you know what I expect. Some other, the company's bleeding money last month. $15,000 with a $12,000 loss, $6,000 worth of expenses with $0 sales. That's equal to 200 man hours. We have to make cuts. This is where we start. Get rid of the floor mats. Company benefits, company match, janitor, reduce the rent, cut wages, company vehicles will be parked.
So Chuck, I'm going to stop you there. This is really painful to listen to. What is it like for you to read that and see how you were feeling back then?
Back then I didn't see it, but to sit here and do this, I'm thinking, boy, what a jerk I was. I was just so focused on all the rotten stuff that I wasn't looking at any of the good stuff. That's one of the reasons that I really started working with you, Sabrina, is because I knew that I had to change something, because if we were going to survive, we had to turn things around. And, it had to be a place where people come to work that enjoyed their job instead of saying, oh, I got to go to work today,
Yeah. Well, and I can't let you get away with calling yourself a jerk, because when I listened to you read that, and having worked with you during that time, I know that you cared very deeply for your team. And I know that looking at those cuts were extremely painful for you. And I hear a lot of fear in what you were reading. Like, you were really feeling desperate. You didn't want things to go the way they were going, and you were grasping at straws to try to pull it together. Scott, you were there during that time, right?
I was. Yes, I was.
Do you remember what it was like on the team?
Depressing at times, not a fun environment. Like Chuck mentioned, you would wake up in the morning, and then you would drag your feet just to come to work. And, I don't think it was solely and completely Chuck's fault. I think he was living in fear at the time of the unknowns and the economy. Economy for us is always a factor. We're driven over here by the oil and gas industry. And, most of the time, if there's a reduction in that sector, it drives everything down. Your margins get lower, profitability is not there. There's a lot of depressing things to think about. But, I can tell you from my experience, starting here in 2006, this man and this company has come a long way. I've seen a lot of the changes. I've seen, just the atmosphere and everybody's attitudes completely changed. There was times where you would come in and you would get, I say, barked at or just grilled, because you made a simple mistake. And now that I look back on it, it was fear. Absolutely. 100%. And, I have learned a lot from this man as well, over the years, not just, how to write up an order. We're talking about how to handle employees, and the culture, the office culture, creating a learning culture around here.
Yeah. And I think a lot of our clients at Tap the Potential who've encountered Chuck, like at our retreat, really look up to you guys and what you have accomplished with your team. So I want to contrast what Chuck just shared with where his mindset was with what it's like now. And we have outward objective evidence with the employee responses to the Inc. survey. So here's some perspective. According to Gallup, 87% of employees are unengaged or actively disengaged. So in most companies, only 13% of employees are somewhat engaged at work. 92.31% of Chuck and Scott's employees are highly engaged currently. They have 16 employees who filled out this survey. So 15 of them came in as highly engaged, and only one is moderately engaged, not disengaged, just moderately engaged. That is phenomenal. But we're not going to stop there. I want to read there were so many good comments from the team members in the survey, but there's one that really stands out, and I want to read it and share it with our listeners because you'll hear the contrast. You heard how Chuck was back in 2009 and his mindset and where he was. And if you can just imagine what it felt like to be a team member sitting there listening to him talk like that in front of the meeting, contrast that with what this team member has to say about what it feels like to be at Overhead Door in Riverton Lander currently.
Can I preface something real quick, Sabrina? Pardon the interruption.
Go.
The employee that wrote this was probably only here maybe 1 to 2 months when he wrote this. He's only been here for maybe 15 months, maybe a year and a half now, and he wasn't here that long when he wrote this. So go on.
Yeah. He says, I had worked hand in hand with Overhead Door Company for a lot of years in my previous job. And when that company closed down, Overhead Door Company welcomed me with open arms. I have learned so much in my 8 months here, and I have never worked at a place where everyone tries so hard for their customers as we do here. No matter the job, large or small, we treat them all the same and do everything we can as a team to make the project a success. Our team works well together, and we are supported by an excellent general manager, aka Scott, and owner, aka Chuck. I would highly recommend our business for recognition of best business because we are a cohesive unit with excellent systems and tools at our disposal and a good team attitude to work together to always succeed. Our success is based on the satisfaction of our customers, and we never falter in that goal of turning out the best products and services around.
I got goosebumps.
Me too.
Me too. That's amazing. So what a turnaround. And it has not. And so, this didn't happen overnight. It wasn't a switch that was flipped. And I want to share a few other results from the survey, and then we're going to dive into what these guys have done to create this great place to work. So what happened with the Inc. survey is they provide a comparison between what Chuck and Scott's team has to say about what it's like to work for them with the construction industry as a whole. And so there were a lot of questions in there where Chuck and Scott were scored by their employees as being at 100%, which is head and shoulders above where most are in the construction industry. And I want to share a few of those here with you. My job is interesting. I'm happy in my job. My immediate manager helps me be successful. I am paid fairly. The benefits meet my needs. When the company makes changes, I understand why. My opinions seem to count at work. So 100% of you guys as team members feel this way. about in these areas. And there were lots of other statements on there too. And you guys were scoring in the 90, 95 range. And on every single indicator of a great place to work. So tell me, what are you guys doing? What's the secret?
You want me to go?
Sure, go ahead.
So I think it's very simple, Sabrina. I think you take care of your employees, they take care of the business, period. There's been a lot of things that we've done in the past to get to where we are today, but more than ever, we empower the employees. We give them the sense of there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We give them the opportunity to make their own decisions rather than telling them what to do. We quit judging. We quit assuming. There's so many times in our industry that because something went wrong, you can go off the fence and just go down a road of all the bad stuff, when make it a learning experience. Accept that it was a mistake and make sure they learn from it and move on. There's no sense in dwelling upon it. We have made so many changes around here. It's phenomenal. Just more than ever, empowering the employees, giving them the sense of that we care. We don't just care about, ourselves and be selfish. We care about them. We want to make sure that they succeed, their families succeed, and just make it an awesome place to work. I mean, it's phenomenal on what just little things you can change in a company to make it go the opposite direction. It's amazing.
You take that judgment out of there, it just opens up a whole different path to go down, because, like Scott was saying, we're giving them the ability to make their own decisions. And rather than when they make that decision and look at it as, what did you do that for? We come back and say, tell me your thinking on that. How'd you come up with that decision? And that gives us the opportunity to see it in a different light, because the one thing that I know that Sabrina has really taught me over the years is not everybody thinks like I think. What's common sense to me isn't common sense to somebody else. And once I learned that, and I learned how to talk to the different personalities that are out there, yeah, it's a whole different world.
So, Chuck, we're going to dig into that just a little bit, but let's take a break here and hear from our sponsors.
Today's episode is brought to you by my coaching company, Tap the Potential. At Tap the Potential, we specialize in transforming life and cash-sucking small businesses into highly profitable, great places to work. And that's the topic of today's podcast. Our other sponsors include Contractor Business Solutions and the Small Business Consulting Group.
Okay, now we're back. Chuck, you just threw out some really big comments that I want to dig into, because I think it's eye-opening for our listeners. You mentioned judgment, not being judgmental. You mentioned being curious. You mentioned learning how to talk to employees and different personality types. This is something that I think a lot of business owners, when you go into business, you don't realize you're going to have to become a mini psychologist. And it sounds like you've mastered some of these things. So what is it about not being judgmental? Let's break that apart first. What does that look like?
What does that look like? Okay, I'll give you a prime example of it, because Scott and I were going through a hard spot here just last month. And I was being judgmental. I was not thinking, in my mind, he wasn't doing what I wanted. He wasn't doing what I expected. It was just, I was just judging everything. And we were kind of at a point where we didn't even want to talk to each other. And then I had that eye-opening, experience, and I went and got Scott and I said, let's go have a cup of coffee. And we went and had that cup of coffee, and we had a heart-to-heart talk. And it didn't solve everything, but we both knew how each other felt. There was no animosity. There was no yelling. There was no, it was just a conversation that we had. And at the end of it, we both felt a whole hell of a lot better.
And that eye-opening experience that you had, you were talking with a friend who helped you see that you were coming from a place of judgment.
Exactly.
And that friend helped you shift.
not only was it, I had conversations with that friend, and then I had a conversation with my wife. And my wife asked me, she says, when you first started this business, she said, when you made a mistake, what'd you do? And I said, well, I guess I learned from it and moved on. And then she just looked at me and she says, then let Scott do the same thing. And, it's sometimes you get so focused on what's wrong that you're not looking at anything other than that. And you just have to step back and look at the whole picture, because there's a whole lot out there that's a whole lot better than just what's going wrong.
And one of the things that you do really well, Chuck, is you are open to feedback. Even when you're really angry, you have always been open to feedback.
Yeah, you can't, if you're not going to listen to, if you're asking for help and you're not going to listen for it, why are you asking?
Good point. Very, very good point. So the other comment that you made is staying curious. So you were talking about if an employee does something and you don't agree with it, instead of beating them up for a choice that they made that you wouldn't have made, you have a different approach to it. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. There again, in the old days when I was that grumpy guy, when I was, I'd do the morning paperwork and I'd read the work order and I'd think, what did they do that for? And then when they showed up, I would just jump on them and say, why didn't you do it this way? And today, when I come across that situation, the question is tell me why you made that decision. Why did you decide to do it that way? And there are times when they give me their reasoning and it's something that totally makes sense that I never thought of. And there again, people don't think exactly how you think, and you have to be willing to accept that.
Our mindset comes through in so many subtle ways. And when you just shift your mindset to being curious about the other person's choice and what was behind their choice, your tone is different. I know our listeners can't see you. I can see you on video right now, but your whole body language shifted. And the other thing that I'm appreciating about what you're sharing is you're being real. You're not saying, I've got it all together now. I don't ever make these mistakes. Because just as you were talking about the situation that you and Scott had a little while back, you were in a judger place.
Yeah.
And you had to shift. That's our human nature.
Yeah.
We're never going to cure ourselves of our human nature. We just have to learn some better ways.
Scott and I'll joke with each other every once in a while, and you're judging.
We do. We catch each other. It's nice to have the relationship that we have, because we're able to bounce stuff off of each other, and we're able to critique each other more than anything. Because if I see something that he does or vice versa, we're able to talk about that and find out and work together to solve, well, what did we do wrong there? What can we change for future? And like I mentioned before, we learn off of each other, and we bounce it all back and forth. It's like ping pong.
Yeah. So the other piece that you guys talked about is understanding different personality types. So I'm assuming if you have 15 or 16 team members, they're not the same personalities as you.
Oh, Lord, no.
And you two don't have the same personality.
No, we don't.
No.
So what have you learned about this, Chuck and Scott?
I can give you a prime example. I'm a task leader type person. So that's what I do, is I get those tasks done, and I don't mind leading to get those tasks done. But Scott, he's a people person. He likes to be around people. He likes interaction with people. He likes talking with people. So, what I would do if Scott and I were talking to the same person, I would be done in 2 minutes, and Scott would be done maybe in 5 to 8 minutes, and I'm ready to move on. And that's the difference. You have to recognize those personalities and be able to interact with them. And you can't push your personality off on them. You got to speak their language, because they'll understand that.
So in what ways is Scott being more of a people type, you being more of a task type? In what ways is Scott's type an asset to the team?
Well, he's the person that I give all the problem customers to.
The escalations.
Yeah, because he will handle the situation a whole lot better than I will.
People types are good at cajoling, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I sure am. What do I call it? There's a word I call it. You tell me I'm good at it. I can't think of it.
The gift of gab?
Well, not just the gift of gab, but, when those escalated phone calls come in.
You're diplomatic about it.
Yeah. Chuck will ask me questions about the situation and whatnot. And, my philosophy has always been, you got to give a little to get a lot, and since Chuck is a task-oriented person, he doesn't want to give it a little. He doesn't want to give any. He wants it all. So when I'm, discussing the situation with the customer and I offer a discount or I offer something to where we can get something out of it rather than going through the entire process of either not getting paid for the job or not compromising with the customer or not discussing how I felt about the situation versus how they feel about it. I mean, I'll have a 20, 30-minute conversation with somebody just to make them another happy customer, because I know in my heart and my mind that because I'm a consumer too, I would want somebody treating me the same way. And that's the perspective that I look at it from. What's going to get that customer to come back to us and use us again? Because let's face it, this is a small town, population of 10, 11,000 people. Word travels fast. And if we're not doing our job, the word of mouth is going to slowly decline, and we're not going to be that premier dealer as who we are. And I'm all about making sure that our name is synonymous with respect, with a great working environment, with we're doing it once and we're doing it right. I mean, there's so many aspects to what we do that I want to make sure that, and we'll maybe talk about this later, but when Chuck slowly dissipates and goes away from the company, that I'm able to bring it to where and sustain it to where it is that him and his team have done it, right?
So let's talk about that a little bit. You guys are quite the team. You work well together. You complement each other really well. And for our listeners, you really need to go to our show notes and check out their picture. They look like father-son. They're not related. And you're in a transition phase with the company, with Scott stepping up in the recent years, taking more and more leadership, Chuck, so that you can have some time to go and do things that you enjoy doing. How have you guys been navigating that?
I've been doing this for 40 years and, I love what I do. There's no doubt about that. But, most people get out at 25 or 30 years, and here I am at 40 years. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life here. I want to be able to get out and enjoy what's out there before it's too late. So Scott and I have been working together to where he is going to take over this company. And he calls me his mentor, and I guess I never looked at it that way as a mentor. I'm trying to teach him the ropes and save him from mistakes that I've made, but in the same token, I need to let him make his own mistakes. That's what I've learned recently is that, when my wife said, you've made mistakes and you learned from it and you moved on. And Scott's not going to do things the way I did it. And, he's going to have a totally different way of doing things. One of the things that we have with our employees is a quarterly meeting where we call it Wings and Things. And we talk about the company as how it's doing, where we're at with sales. And, we have a little training session. And this last time I turned it over to Scott. We just had it last Wednesday night. Yeah. And Scott ran the meeting, and he did a terrific job with it. And, it was fun, and I didn't have to do anything. And that's what I'm working for,
Chuck, what advice would you have for our listeners who maybe are in similar shoes as you, have been running their company for years, and they're wanting to raise leaders to take over?
Well, you've got to have those A players, and that person needs to be an A player. And, I, from experience, have just kind of put from previous dealings, trying to put golden handcuffs on employees to see if we could lead them into a spot. It doesn't work that way. I think there's a whole lot more respect gained if that person works his way into that rather than, just walks in and say, I'm taking this place over. Scott's doing a great job and I'm enjoying the way it's going right now. And I think he is too. I don't know if I'm ready to just totally walk away, but I'm taking time off little by little.
Yes. And Scott, for business owners who have team members that they recognize are A players and who have that potential to be leaders, from your experience being mentored by Chuck, what advice would you give them about making it easy to be a leader in the company?
Well, first and foremost, you need to be devoted, dedicated to what you do. You have to love what you do and you have to enjoy it. Be happy when you come in. Be happy that there's an atmosphere to go to and you get paid to do it. For other business owners, I would say make sure that you have a relationship built with that A player that is strong enough to stand the test of time. Because if you don't, it'll never work. And the relationship that Chuck and I have built over the years is we can tell each other anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything from the too much information stuff, the TMI stuff, to anything business. And it just takes a devout person with the company to be able to pass those reins on it and be able to put your trust into them, because there's a lot of trust. I'm not Chuck and he's not me, and that's why we try not to judge each other or assume things, but it happens. It's nature. It's going to happen. And I'll tell you right now, it might happen again. We can do everything we can do to prevent it, but it's just the nature of what we do.
So the goal isn't to get along perfectly all the time. The goal is to have open, honest communication.
And trust.
And trust, and not let things build up between the two of you.
Correct. Because nothing, nobody's perfect, and I speak from the heart most of the time. And I know Chuck does too. And it's an incredible relationship that we have and what we're able to do with the company to make it work.
How do you think that comes through and impacts the rest of the team? Because, it's a little bit, as I'm listening to you guys, I'm struck by it's a little bit like a mother, father, and a family. If the parents get along, the kids are happy. If the parents don't get along, kids aren't happy.
Yeah, I said that the other day. Go on. Tell us about that.
Believe it or not, everybody that works here is my family. And I am as concerned about them as much as I am my own family, because I want them to succeed. I want their lives to succeed. I want them to grow. And, that's how we treat everybody around here is family. Yeah, we're all going to yell at each other just like everybody else in any other family does at one time or another, but there's nothing that happens that we don't work it out. And, having conversations is a lot easier when there isn't that emotion in them than with all the emotion. And you get a lot better results. And, this is a family business from the top all the way down to the janitor.
Scott, any final words before we wrap up?
I mentioned earlier that Overhead Door Company, Riverton and Lander, our establishment, it's not just Chuck's establishment, it's our establishment. Every single person in this company makes this place run and run well. That is one of the reasons we are one of the best places that we believe to work. And that is why we were ranked way above industry standard, in this Inc. magazine survey. So I'm extremely happy to be here. Me and my family are very fortunate to have what we have because of this place. And, just stay true to yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for sharing so much wisdom with us. I know that our listeners really appreciate hearing not just, everything is wonderful and we're a great place to work and it's all perfect, but your vulnerability and being willing to talk about the hard times, where you've come from. That's On the Profit by Design podcast, what we're about is recognizing authenticity, that being in business is tough. We have to pick our chin up often and keep moving forward. And you guys are a real example of that. So I appreciate you being here with us today and sharing that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.